I asked multiple retirees in their 60s, 70s, and 80s a really simple question. What do you regret the most? The answers weren't what I expected, and you need to hear them before it's too late. Indeed, as you get older, you accumulate and carry these things around like an unwanted backpack full of weight. I should have, if only I had. By the way, I'm RJ and I'm 62. I might not look like your typical retiree, but I've been fortunate enough to have experience in what I call mini retirements throughout my life. I had the unique experience of retiring multiple times before turning 60, which gave me a different perspective on what matters the most. But don't think I'm rich. In a few of my early retirements, I barely had any money in my bank accounts, but I still took extended time off in what I could only call states of retirement. So now I've had multiple opportunities to be in the mindset of being done, and I've learned a lot about pondering the inventory of my life. And today, I'm sharing the most common regrets that I've heard from people who are now 10 to 20 years ahead of me, so that you and I don't have to have those same regrets when we're in our 70s or 80s. Whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or even retirement age like me in my 60s, this is one time you'll want to listen to your elders. So, what are the regrets that they share? Number one, they waited too long to enjoy the fruits of their labor. The most heartbreaking regret I hear consistently is from people who saved diligently their entire lives, but waited too long to actually enjoy it. Look at this Reddit post. This guy wished he had gone to places they wanted to go before they retire. Because here's the reality no one tells you. When we age, our bodies change. I know this firsthand. Some develop diabetes, others struggle with osteoporosis or rheumatoid arthritis. But even if you avoid serious conditions, we all just slow down. We have less energy, and we just can't move as well as we used to. So that dream trip you've been saving for, it's not as easy or fun with a bad back. Interestingly, baby boomers actually spend more on travel than any other age group, about $6,000 annually according to recent studies. But what good is having the budget if your health won't cooperate? I talked to this couple recently who had meticulously planned a tour of Europe once they hit the magic number. Well, when they finally reached it at 72, they already had mobility issues that made navigating those charming but cobblestone European streets nearly impossible. Here's what I learned from my own experience and from those conversations. There's a delicate balance between saving for tomorrow and living for today. Look, nobody on their deathbed ever said, I wish I'd spent less on experiences and more on my mutual funds. The real tragedy isn't running out of money. It's running out of time to use that money on what actually matters. And I'm not saying blow your savings on a yacht. I'm saying don't put off living until some perfect future moment. Those little trips, those family dinners, those silly little splurges, they're not just expenses. They're the stuff that life is actually made of. And the next regret is number two, losing a sense of purpose. Look, I didn't expect it when I first retired, but I lost my sense of purpose, and I wasn't alone with this. According to WebMD, almost 1 in 3 retirees say they feel depressed, a rate higher than that of the adult population overall. And this guy on Reddit continued to go to the office even when he had already retired, mainly to just keep himself entertained. What many of us don't realize is that work provides more than income. It gives us structure, social connection, and more importantly, purpose. And so when that stops, you somehow lose that. When I finally retired for the last time 3 years ago, that first year was unexpectedly hard, deeply depressing in fact. On paper, life looked great. I had more than enough money to live comfortably. I was playing golf regularly, traveling often, and spending real time with my daughter and family, doing all the things I used to postpone. But emotionally, I felt hollow, felt useless. It was as if everything I had built over 30 years, my experience, my insight, my identity, had been packed away in a box and shoved into the back of a closet, gathering dust. Forgotten. That sense of irrelevance hit me harder than I ever imagined. The retirees I met who thrive don't see retirement as an end to purpose, but as freedom to pursue deeper purpose. Whether it's mentoring, volunteering, creating art, or even starting a small business, they found ways that matter to others and themselves. The regret comes when people assume purpose will find them rather than actively seeking it out. The next regret is number 3, neglecting relationships in favor of working. I've been certainly guilty of this. When work consumes your life, something has to give, and too often, it's the relationships that matter most. One of the retirees I spoke with said that he was gonna reconnect with friends and spend more time with his kids someday when work slowed down. Now his address book is full of people who passed away, and his adult children have lives that don't include him. During my career, I spent years deep in relentlessly building, hustling, and chasing the next milestone. I learned a hard truth about relationships. They're living things. They're not trophies that you can set aside and expect to find untouched later. I wasn't off exploring the world. I was buried in work, chasing titles and money. And when I finally came up for air, I was stunned by how much I'd missed. Birthdays, weddings, the quiet everyday moments that truly build connection. All of it had slipped by while I was busy being productive. The retirees I've met with the fewest regrets didn't wait until they had more time. They somehow found a way to show up even when it was inconvenient, even when they were tired, even if it meant saying no to overtime or a promotion. As one retiree told me, my biggest success wasn't my career. It was raising children who still want to call me just to chat. This next regret is one that I personally wrestled with during my mini retirements. It's closely connected to relationships, but I think it goes even deeper into who we think we are. So number 4, I define myself by my career. We become our jobs, our titles, our positions, and then one day they're gone. A majority of workers, 66% in fact, report having significant career regrets according to the recent research. Not balancing work and life ranks at the top. Without even thinking about it, we sacrifice our identities to our professions only to discover later that companies can replace us in a heartbeat. As someone who was a CEO multiple times, I understand this identity trap completely. During my mini retirements, I had to face that uncomfortable question: who am I without a business card? And what happens when my phone stops ringing or my email inbox is mostly empty? It was like looking in the mirror and seeing a stranger. What I discovered is that we are not our job titles. The happiest retirees I meet are those who see retirement not as losing identity, but as reclaiming a more complete one. They've learned that who you are matters more than what you did. And the happiest people, well, they started thinking this way before they ever retired. Number 5, not taking care of their health. The cruel irony of retirement is that you finally have the time to travel, to play with grandkids, pursue hobbies, but your body might not cooperate. This is one of those meta regrets that affects every single aspect of your life. According to Fidelity Investments, the average 65-year-old retiree today will spend over $150,000 on healthcare alone during retirement. $150,000. And I suspect this estimate is conservative, but that's just the financial cost. It doesn't account for the lost experiences. This is perhaps the most preventable regret, yet one of the most common. During my own mini retirements, I used that time to reset health habits that had slipped during intense periods of work. And what I learned from older retirees is that health in later years isn't just about living longer. It's about freedom to actually enjoy those extra years. The retirees with fewer health regrets aren't necessarily marathon runners. They're people who made consistent, moderate investments in their well-being, a good diet, regular movement, stress management, preventative care, and viewing their health as their primary retirement asset, because without it, everything else loses value. Now let's get to the next one. Number 6, worrying too much about things that will never happen. Man, we spend our lives imagining worst-case scenarios that rarely come to pass. Think about it. How many sleepless nights have you spent worrying about financial disaster, health problems, family issues, and how many of those exact worries actually happened exactly as you feared? Financial anxiety is normal. I've experienced it myself even after considerable success. But what I've learned from those in their 70s and 80s is that excessive worry just doesn't steal joy. It often focuses on the wrong things entirely. During my time traveling around the world, I witnessed people with far fewer resources finding contentment through focusing on what they could control. The most content retirees I've met have developed what I call a practical peace. They've learned to prepare reasonably for what they can, they accept what they can't control, and recognize that adaptability ultimately serves them better than anxiety ever did. As one retiree told me, I wish I'd spent less time worrying and more time living. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Number 7. I waited for permission to live the life I wanted. Man, why do we wait so long to give ourselves permission to live authentically? It's the strangest thing. We know life is short, yet we live it as if we have all the time in the world to eventually get around to all the things that matter most to us. This regret might be the most profound. In my own journey, Leaving corporate America in my 20s to travel the world terrified me. Everyone told me I was crazy to step off the career ladder. But that decision, choosing my own path despite others' opinions, shaped everything that came after. I discovered that permission to live authentically only ever comes from one person, and that's you. The retirees who express the most fulfillment aren't those who followed a traditional script. They're the ones who, at some point, decided to author their own story. Some found the courage early, others later, but all of them eventually realized that life is too short according to others' expectations. So ask yourself now, what would you do if you knew that permission to live your most authentic life has already been granted? Because it has. Number 8, I worry too much about what others think. This is living for others' opinions instead of your own happiness. I understand that we're social creatures by nature, but many of us take it way too far, living our lives according to an imaginary audience that's barely paying attention. You know, when I decided to step away from the corporate ladder in my 30s to travel, you wouldn't believe the opinions people shared. If I listened to them, I'd have missed the experiences that shaped who I am today. The happiest retirees I've met have learned the liberating truth that at the end of the day, no one else's opinion pays your bills or fills your heart. They've discovered that authenticity isn't selfish, it's necessary. The only regret worse than caring what others think is realizing too late that most of them weren't thinking about you at all. Number 9, I didn't document the journey. Forgetting the best moments of your life is really frustrating. And in fact, this is a regret few people talk about, but it hits really hard in your later years. Our memories, those precious moments that make up a life well lived, they fade faster than we expect. I started keeping journals and photos during my mini retirements, not as a chore, but as a gift to my future self. Nothing elaborate, just quick notes, a few photos, some ticket stubs, some other tchotchkes and trinkets. It's become one of my most treasured practices. But trust me, when I was back in the working world, I didn't always practice keeping my experiences and memories as well as I should have. Something I regret, and now something I'm focusing on. The retirees with the richest connections to their past aren't necessarily those who live the most exciting lives. They're the ones who preserve pieces of their journey along the way. So write, record, snap something each week. Not for social media, not for validation, but for yourself. Your future self will thank you for these breadcrumbs back to moments that matter. And lastly, number 10, I didn't prepare emotionally for retirement. Many have planned their finances, but not their feelings. We spend decades preparing financially for retirement, but almost no time preparing emotionally or mentally for this massive transition in life. During my mini retirements, I learned that without structure, freedom can actually become its own prison. I discovered that I needed to create new routines, new goals, and most importantly, new sources of meaning. The retirees who navigate this transition most successfully are those who understand that retirement isn't the end, it's the beginning that requires as much planning for your identity as your income. The most successful retirees build bridges to their new life while they're still working, developing interest in relationships that will carry them forward. Don't go in blind. Your emotional portfolio needs diversification just as much as your financial one. So what's the big conclusion here? When I reflect on these regrets shared by those who walked this path before us, I notice something really important. None of them are about money alone. They're about how we use our money, time, and energy in service of what truly matters to us. It's really not about escaping life, but about finally having the freedom to embrace it fully. The greatest gift these 70 and 80-year-olds have given us isn't just their regrets, but it's the chance for us to choose differently. I believe that time is more valuable than money. We can always earn it again, but we can never relive moments. My hope is that by sharing these insights today, you might sidestep some of these regrets and move towards a retirement filled with intention rather than pressure. Remember, it's not too late. It's time to live, just not survive.